Hari Om. Good morning, children. Wish you a happy day. We are dealing with Unit 2, and today we are dealing with the poem Our Casuarina Tree by Toru Dutt. You know, this is actually a descriptive form, and here Toru Dutt describes the huge tree in her garden, which symbolizes her happy childhood associations. Toru Dutt describes the great grand structure of the casuarina tree and the amazing nature of the casuarina tree. And she says nature has a very major part in expressing and inducing the feelings of the childhood days of the poet. And through this poem, she even goes to that extent that she wants to immortalize the tree and it should stand even after her days. Now let us go through the poem and understand the content of the poem. First, let us know about the author. Toru Dutt was a Bengali poet from the Indian subcontinent who wrote in English and French. She was the third daughter of the family. The Dutt family was a family of distinguished intellectuals and poets. She also had the advantage of being taught by excellent English tutors at home and later on of the long stay in Europe and England. Toru, with all her exposure to and involvement in Western life and culture, loved the land of birth and remained thoroughly Indian in consciousness and sensibility. Besides her well-known collection of the poems with the title Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan, she has to her credit a volume of poems in French titled Sheaf Gleaned in French Fields. Our Casuarina Tree, the most well-known of Toru's poem, was included in her miscellaneous poems. You all know Bengal has produced a number of poets. No one can ever forget Rabindranath Tagore, who has composed the national anthem. And like him, we have Toru Dutt. And we have already learnt about Lotus, a poem by her, talking about the dignity and the quality of the flowers there of who to rule. Now she talks about the casuarina tree, which pulls her memory and she wants to immortalize it. Let's go through the first stanza of the poem. Like a huge python winding round and round, the rugged trunk indented deep with scars, up to its very summit near the stars, a creeper climbs in whose embraces bound no other tree could live. She's talking about the giant tree, casuarina tree, and this tree has a creeper wound around it. And this was like a huge python, and it has wound round so tight and has left deep marks, and the deep marks are found up to the summit of the sky, the top of the sky where we find the stars there. Like a huge python winding round and round, the creeper that has wound round the boughs, the top boughs of the casuarina tree, and it has wound around the rugged trunk, the rough branches, and has left deep scars, and these scars are found to the top of the tree, it seems. A creeper climbs in whose embraces bound no other tree could live. She talks about the strength of the casuarina tree. No other tree could be so strong as to see a creeper with a strong embrace on it. A creeper climbs in whose embraces bound no other tree could live. Since the tree was very strong and giant-sized, it could bear the creeper winding around it. It has embraced it so tight, and the tree stands for its strength that no other tree could bear the creeper winding around so hard, it seems. But gallantly, the giant wears the scarf, and flowers are hung in crimson clusters, all the boughs among, and here the creeper appears like a scarf, it seems. Earlier the tree was wearing a scarf, and it was printed with colorful flowers, it seems. The creeper had flowers, crimson flowers, the crimson colored flowers there, and this appeared, it seems, as though the tree was wearing a scarf printed with flowers. It was found among the branches there, and it was a wonderful sight, it seems. Whereon all day are gathered bird and bee. And this itself is a wonderful sight, and this crimson clusters, the flowers of the creepers, had invited the birds and the bees towards it, and for the whole day you can find the gathering of the birds and bees on the trees, it seems. And oft at nights the garden overflows with one sweet song that seems to have no close, sung darkling from our tree while men repose. Okay, we have seen the colorful flowers there, and these flowers were so attractive that it had invited the birds and the bees all through the day. And apart from this, you had the sweet song sung by the birds, and it was overflowing throughout the garden, it seems. Okay, and it went on till the dawn. It went on till the dawn while men repose. Men repose here, the men are at rest, and the birds are never at rest. They keep singing, and they were just keeping the song overflowing throughout the garden. Now this is the content of the first stanza. The first stanza talks about the great giant tree which had a creeper that wound around the branches of the tree there, and it had gone to the top, and no other tree could be strong enough to have such a tight embrace, it seems, and it was quite brave. And the creeper with its crimson flowers appeared like a scarf with printed flowers, it seems, and these attracted the birds and the bees towards it, and the birds were singing the songs that were overflowing throughout until the dawn while the men were at rest. This is the content of the first stanza. As I already told you, Toru Dutt describes the gigantic nature of the tree here. Next stanza. When first my casement is wide open thrown, at dawn, my eyes delighted on its rest. Now she says, morning, it has dawned, and she just opens her window. It's actually a casement. Casement is nothing but which is locked to one side and it is open towards the other like a door. And when she opened, she was delighted to see such a sight there. Sometimes, and most in winter, on its crest, a grey baboon sits statue like alone, watching the sunrise. And mostly during the winter time, she enjoys the sight of a monkey. Baboon here refers to an ape, a large monkey which was just sitting on the bough there watching the sunrise. And while on lower boughs, his puny offspring leap about and play. So the grey baboon, a large monkey, was sitting on the top branch and was watching the sunrise, while the young ones were just jumping about and playing. And far and near, kokilas hail the day. Kokila is nothing but birds like a nightingale that sings so sweet there, and even they hail the day. And to their pastures went our sleepy cows. And as it is dawned, the pastures, the cows are just moving for their grazing. And in the shadow on the broad tank cast by that hoar tree, so beautiful and vast, the water lilies spring like snow en masse. So the kokilas are singing the songs there. The sleepy cows are just leaving for grazing, and you find the image of the tree falling on the tank, the broad tank there, which was completely deposited with the snow. And it was such a beautiful sight. And in this pond, you could see that the water lilies springing like with white flowers, and it was totally a wonderful sight to look at, it seems. So second stanza, the poet opens her window. It has dawned. The poet opens her window and she is delighted at the wonderful sight of the tree there. And mostly during winter, she is much delighted. She could see a baboon sitting like a statue watching the sunrise, while the younger ones were playing there in the lower boughs there. And she could hear the kokilas hailing the day, singing the song all through the day, and the sleepy cows leaving for for grazing the lawns there. And the shadow of the tree on the broad tank by that hole with the deposits of that snow and all, that was a wonderful sight there. And even that water lilies that springs on the pond were looking like a snow that in massed, it seems. Okay, but she's just talking about the structure of the casuarina tree. Initially she says it's very strong, no other tree could bear the creeper which has embraced it, and bearing crimson flowers and all that, attracting all the birds and bees, and some bird singing song, and till the dawn. And in the dawn, when she just woke up, she could see the sight of the tree with the baboon, the kokilas, and the cows grazing, and the image of the tree falling on the broad tank deposited with the snow, and the water lilies springing. As I already told you, this is a wonderful sight. You will have to just imagine the sight here. Now coming to this third stanza. But not because of its magnificence, dear is the casuarina to my soul. So it's not that magnificent structure of the tree that is dear to her. It's apart from that, she has some other reason here. Beneath it we have played, though years may roll, O sweet companions, loved with love intense, for your sakes shall the tree be ever dear. So it's not because of the huge structure of the tree that she reminds the tree there. It cherishes some memories where they used to play. She used to play, spend most of her time under the shade of the tree with her siblings and her relatives and her cousins, and this reminds her of her days there. And therefore she even goes to that extent that nature communicates with the tree, communicates with her by bringing back to her the memories where she, along with her friends and relatives, had enjoyed their days there. So it's not because of the structure she remembers the tree, it's because of the memories that brings back to her with her siblings and the classmates there. Blent with your images, it shall arise in memory till the hot tears blind mine eyes. And these memories, they create tears there that blurs her vision. That blurs her vision. It's not because of the magnificence of the tree that she wants to remember the tree. It's because she has spent most of her time under the tree with her siblings there, and those memories are always cherishable, and she could just recall all the memories there, and those memories have just blurred her vision by the tears, the hot tears there. What is the dirge like murmur that I hear, like the sea breaking on a shingle beach? She could hear the dirge like murmur. Dirge, it's nothing but the sound, the rustling sound of the wind that creates the other sounds also, the move of the twigs and leaves and what not. Similarly, the tree murmurs like that, and it means she feels that the nature communicates with her. The casuarina tree is communicating with her, and this communication is only through her thoughts that she gets at the sight of the tree there. That is what she means here, and it seems it's murmuring there, bringing back to her all the sweet memories there. It was dirge like first, and it was like the sea breaking on a shingle beach. Like the shingle is nothing but the rocky beach, the waves just beating the rocks over there, the sound produced like that. Okay, and here also she says, and she could never forget the memories that she had spent under the tree with her. It's the tree's lament and eerie speech that haply to the unknown land may reach. And here she just tells us she's not in India at present there. She is abroad for her higher study. She has left for higher studies abroad, and she could hear the lament of the trees even in an unknown land. That is what she says. This nature communicates. So this nature communication of this nature is not new to us. We have already learnt this in 11th standard by a poem by William Wordsworth, actually. Lines written in early spring. When the birds enjoy, when the breeze enjoy the nature and they just cooperate with the nature. What has happened to man? We just don't do at all. We replenish, but we forget to replenish what we had taken from the nature. Similarly, here she says nature communicates with her. Nature communicates, and this sight of the tree brings back to her mind all the happy the days that she had spent under the tree there, and it's in the form of a lament there. And this lament she could feel even though she is abroad. So the third stanza states that she does not remember the tree because of its magnificent appearance. Actually, it brings to her mind those happy days where she had spent under the tree with her friends and relatives, her classmates. And so she can never forget the tree, and these memories strike her mind until tears blur her vision in her eyes there. And she compares it to a lament there. Though she is not in India, she is abroad, but she could just listen to the lament even in an unknown land. So a tree is not remembered just because of its structure, but it is remembered because of the happy days spent under the tree, it seems. And this sight helps her to bring back all the sweet memories to her, which means nature, the tree communicates with her even though she is in a foreign land. Now coming to this fourth stanza. Unknown, yet well known to the eye of faith. Now here she talks about the faith. See, faith. Faith changes your destiny. It is said so. One who has this eye of faith can know both known as well as unknown, it seems. And here, though she is abroad, she could listen to the lament of this casuarina tree. Lament in the sense the sweet memories spent under the tree, even though she is in a far off land. I have heard that wail for far away in distant lands by many a sheltered bay, when slumbered in his cave the water wraith and the waves gently kissed the classic shore of France or Italy beneath the moon, when earth lay tranced in a dreamless swoon. Here I would like to bring you the nature of the earth there. So you know the sight of the moon is a very pleasant sight, and the earth is very silent now. It is in a dreamy condition there, and everything is silent there, and this silence enables her to listen to the lament of the tree, especially in the land of France or Italy. They just kiss the classic show of France or Italy. It doesn't mean she'll have to come to India and view through her casement the casuarina tree, but she can view and lament, hear the lament of the tree even on the classical shore of France or Italy. And here she means that she gives a description of the earth there, which is in a dreamy condition. And every time the music rose before mine inner vision rose a form sublime, thy form, O tree, as in my happy prime, I saw thee in my own loved native clime. Here she talks about the climate. Climate, of course, varies. Here India is a tropical country, and there she is now in France or Italy, where there is entirely different climate there. But climate is not a factor at all here, so it doesn't stop her from her vision there. It is the entire clear sight of what she had viewed in India. She views there even in a far off land. That is what she means there. And every time the music rose, before my inner vision rose a form sublime, thy form, O tree, as in my happy prime. I have enjoyed the days as I had enjoyed in my childhood days. So there is no change at all. Even though she is in a far off land, there is no problem with this climatic conditions or whatsoever. She experiences the same childhood happiness even in the far off land where she is now, that is in France or Italy. Okay, she talks about the faith there. So one who has this eye of faith can know both unknown as well as well known. And here she means to say that she could enjoy the same sight and the same speech as she had listened in her childhood days, even though she is in a far off land. And this was possible because the earth lay tranced in a dreamless mood. It was in a dreamy condition there, and everything was so silent that she could listen to the lament of the tree. And here lament actually refers to the happy childhood days that she had spent under the tree. Coming to this last stanza. Therefore, I fain would consecrate a lay. She is eagerly waiting to consecrate. Consecrate means she wants to immortalize the tree. She wants everyone to remember the tree. Everyone here in the sense, all the readers here. So many, it is a prescribed poem, and all have an opportunity to admire and enjoy the nature here, and she wants to immortalize the tree. The tree, in the sense, she wants the tree to be remembered forever. Therefore, I fain would consecrate a lay unto thy honor, tree beloved of those who now in blessed sleep for a repose. And she wanted to honor the tree on behalf of all the people who had played under the tree who are no more at present. But she would like to immortalize a tree even on behalf of those people who are not there. Therefore, I fain would consecrate a lay unto thy honor, tree beloved of those who now in blessed sleep for a repose. Which means she wants to immortalize a tree, and that is a way to honor the tree, it seems, because this tree had brought up her in such a way that she had spent a very happy childhood there under the tree, and on behalf of all the people who are no more at present would like to honor the tree by immortalizing it to be remembered forever. Dearer than life to me, alas, were they. She says that is even dearer than life to her. So the Casuarina tree is more than her life to her. Mayst thou be numbered when my days are done with deathless trees like those in Borrowdale. So she wants a tree to be remembered even after her death, it seems. Okay, already we have this poet William Wordsworth who have already immortalized his own trees, like those in Borrowdale, under whose awful branches lingered pale. So that's what she says here. So this is not new to her. This consecration is not new, because already you have poets who had honored their own trees there along the districts of the Borrowdale, and similarly she would like to honor the tree by consecrating it, by immortalizing it even after her death, that it shall be remembered. Fear, trembling hope, and death, the skeleton, and time the shadow. Yeah, she says we should not fear. We should not fear. And thou weak the verse that would thy beauty feign. O fain rehearse, may love defend thee from oblivion's curse. Towards the end, she says, she expresses her wish that tree should be remembered out of love and not just because it cannot be forgotten. Okay, first of all, we will have to. She wants to immortalize a tree through her, like the poet's Wordsworth yew trees there, and she expresses her wish that the tree should be honored and should be immortalized and it should be remembered forever, not because it cannot be forgotten. It should be very near. It should give you that hope. Never fear for death. She says, fear, trembling hope, and death, the skeleton, and time the shadow. Just don't fear. Don't lose hope. For nature has brought in all the sweet memories that she cannot forget it, that it should be forgotten. But she says, The great grand structure along with the amazing nature makes her very happy. So once again we have 5 stanzas. The first stanza talks about the creeper that has wound round a tree which bears a number of crimson flowers, inviting the birds and the bees, and you have the birds on the trees singing sweet songs, and it goes until dawn. And she feels very happy when she opens the casement and delighted at the sight there. She could view a baboon sitting on the top while watching the sunrise, while the offsprings were just jumping about on the lower boughs there. She could listen to the kokila's sweet song. She could see the cows grazing there, and the image of the casuarina tree on the broad tank, and the water lilies springing like snow and mist. And she talks about the magnificence of the casuarina tree, and that had brought sweet memories to her, and she could hear the lament of the tree even though she is abroad, it seems. Even though, and the earth has played a major role by maintaining its silence, she could hear the lament of the tree. And towards her last, she says she wants to honor the tree by immortalizing it on behalf of all the people who had spent their happy days under the tree. She wishes that the tree should be remembered not out of love, should be out of love and not just because it cannot be forgotten. Hope you have understood. Now in the form of key points, I think you can just go through the poem once again. You can just see the pictures along with the points given there. You have a crooked and scarred trunk winds like a python up to the stars. You can just see the crimson red flowers there. It is a huge creeper and its flowers are crimson clusters there. Bees and birds come to it. When people sleep, a song with no end overflows the garden. The poet watches a beautiful tree at dawn through her casement. And this is with regard to your first stanza. And then a monkey sits like a statue on it, and its young ones play in the lower branches. The sleepy cows graze a green field. In the shadow of the oak tree, water lilies come out like a mass of snow. It is not by the size that casuarina attracts the poet's soul. She has played beneath as a child with her mates, and it shall be in her memory forever, it seems. It sadly seems to murmur like the breaking seas. It may reach the other lands. You know, she has left abroad for her higher studies, and now she is settled in France or Italy. And she cannot forget the sight, and it was the same as she had viewed in her own land. The well-known eye of faith and cry far away can see the unknown as well as well-known. She believes that. So again, she talks about the quality of faith here. And the world at night, the music and the inner sight of the bright moon. The tree is seen to be the most loved at the prime of the poet's life. The poet loves and honors a tree and the best place to rest. The tree must be deathless. That's what I told you, no? She wants to immortalize the tree. She wants to honor the tree by making it immortalized, to be remembered forever, even after her death there. Deathless, moving through hope and fear. She expects to protect tree forever. The bonds of love are ill to lose. And thus we come to an end of this poem. Hope you have understood the poem there. So we have just understood the content of the poem. And next, you know, as a poem, we will have to see how the poet Toru Dutt has adorned the poem there. You know, she has used different ornaments like simile, metaphor, personification, and the sound effects like rhyming words, rhyme schemes, etc., etc. Now let us just go through the figures of speech used by the poet here. Okay. First you have a simile. Now you have the comparison of two different objects with a similar quality. And here the very first line, the first stanza, like a huge python winding round and round, the rugged tongue indented deep with seas. Here like a huge python. The creeper is compared to a huge python winding round the tree, It is also called zoomorphism. So here python refers to a snake here, and the creeper has wound round the branches like a snake, it seems. And that is why you have used the zoomorphism. You can either use simile or zoomorphism. In case if you have a question based on what is zoomorphism, then you can answer to this question. Zoomorphism, describing the vine in animal terms as a python. So simile is identified by the direct use of like or as or so as in a sentence, which is a comparing word which brings in the direct comparison. So the creeper has wound round the casuarina tree like a huge python, and here like a huge python the creeper is compared to a huge python, and here the simile, since it is a python an animal term, it can also be called as zoomorphism, it seems. So this you have the very first line, the first stanza, the very first line, you have the usage of simile by the poet. And Toru, that is the poet here. And now coming to the second one, a grey baboon sits statue like alone. And here you have this line in your second stanza. The grey baboon is a monkey. It is compared to a statue. It sits alone like a statue. We have already seen, isn't it? So on the tree, on the top, you could see the grey baboon, a large monkey watching the sunrise. And while the younger ones were just jumping about in the lower branches, that is what. And here it was sitting like a statue. I think it has been absorbed by the sunrise there. So nature is being admired by the birds and the animals, except the humans. Except the humans. Yeah, what man has made of man? It is a question already raised by William Wordsworth. 11th standard, I think you had this poem. And here I think I would like to underline this. Even animals enjoy the sight of nature. But man is greedy. He wants everything from nature, but he never wants to replace. This reminds me, God gives and forgives, but man gets and forgets. And here this is the same expressed by a monkey there, which was much absorbed by the sunrise, and it was sitting like a statue. It was amazed at that sight there. But we people need to go to Kanyakumari to watch the sunrise and the sunset. An ordinary casuarina tree has made this grey baboon watch this wonderful sight. And here I would like to stress again, simile is a direct comparison. And here you have this grey baboon, the monkey sitting like a statue. Now then you have the same stanza towards the last. The water lilies spring like snow in mast. The water lilies are sprung fully in the pond, which seems to be like a snow-covered place. As I already told you, she enjoys the sight. The casuarina tree, the image of the casuarina tree has fallen on the large tank there, and this filled with water lilies, a large pond filled with the water lilies, and the water lilies are sprung fully in the pond, and they seem to be like a snow covered place, it seems. Okay, so simile is nothing but direct comparison, two different objects with a similar comparison. And here the creeper had bound like a huge python there. The creeper is compared to a huge python, and since it refers to the animal term, it could also be called as zoomorphism. And second, you are talking about this grey baboon which was sitting like a statue, and the water lilies springing like snow in mast. Hope you have understood what is a simile now. Simile is nothing but the direct comparison. The creeper is compared to a huge python. It's a direct comparison. It has bound round the tree like a huge python there. The grey baboon which was watching the sunrise, it was sitting like a statue there, and the water lilies in the pond seemed like a snow covered place. Next we have personification. Personification is nothing but the qualities of human to the non-living things. And non-living things are considered to have human qualities here. Unknown, yet well known to the eye of faith. Unknown, yet well known. Now this is your fourth stanza. You have the first one. A man who has the eye of faith can see the unknown as well as known as well known. Unknown also as well known. Now you will have to understand this line. She is an Indian. She was brought up in India, and she had spent most of her time under the shade of the casuarina tree. And after for higher studies, when she had left for abroad, even there, through this eye of faith, she could view this. Though it was an unknown land, she could have a clear sight of this tree, it seems. That is what the unknown as well known. She is abroad now, but she could just feel. Yeah, even the climatic condition has not brought any difference in changes there. She could view it as such, it seems. So this is what she means here. A man who has the eye of faith, and faith is it's a quality there. It's an abstract form, but still with that faith, she could view the cashew nut tree as she had viewed in her own motherland. They form, O tree, as in my happy prime. Prime refers to her childhood days here. I saw thee in my own loved native clime. The poet personifies the tree, giving its human characteristics by addressing it as thy, and by capitalizing trees there. O tree. Okay. And thy is actually a form, so it is an antique form only. Not in use at present, but still she says she wants to honor, as I already told you, she wants to honor the tree, not because of its gigantic structure, because the love she had acquired and she had spread and it had given her. So she wants to express it as thy. Very respectable. And by capitalizing trees here. A creeper climbs is whose embrace bound no other tree could live but gallantly. Gallantly here refers to the brave nature, and the tree is so strong that it could bear the creeper there. And the creeper has bound it so tight, so strong, and that's what she means here. A giant wears a scarf and flowers are hung. The creeper is personified as a human being which climbs a tree and embrace it. It has bound it so tight. And it is so strong to bear it. It's so strong to bear it, and no other tree could have done it, seems. So she's talking about the brave, the gigantic structure, the strength of the tree there. Okay, this is personification. Personification, you are talking about the qualities of humans compared to the non-living things here. Here, first unknown yet well-known to the eye of faith. Faith is an abstract quality, but here, with that faith, she could view the tree as she had viewed in her own motherland, it seems. And coming to this next form, they form O tree. Tree is capitalized here. She wants to honor the tree there, and without any change, she has viewed it here. Okay, but as she had viewed it in her childhood days, she had viewed it now at present. Even though she is abroad, she could have the same structure, it seems. And third, she says, no other tree could bear it, it seems. Okay, the giant wears a scarf and flowers are hung. The creeper is personified as a human being which climbs a tree and embraces it. What is that dirge-like murmur that I hear, like the sea breaking on a shingle beach? Dirge-like. So whenever you have this like or as or so in a line, you can consider it to be a direct comparison, and here it is similar. Dirge is nothing but the rustling of the winds here, and this rustling of the wind caused various sounds like the movement of the dried leaves or leaves of the trees or whatever it is, and this sound made by is like the murmur of the tree that she could hear. Yeah, it was just the waves on a rocky shore. And the second one, like the sea breaking on a shingle beach. The tree is personified, singing its lament, which might be the wind rustling through the leaves, a dirge-like murmur mourning the loss of the past here. And here, I've given you the additional forms here. And you can just go through. It's a tree's lament here. Tree. Usual humans lament, they just grumble. And here you have this trees lamenting. It misses the children who had spent their days under it. And here it is personified. Fear, trembling, hope. Yeah, fear, trembling, hope. So fear will definitely allow you to lose your hope. Never you should have that fear in you. And if you are as like that eye of faith, here fear, trembling, hope. And time, the shadow. And here it is a metaphor. Time. Yeah, now it is a long since she had played under it. It was during her childhood she had spent under the tree. Now she has grown and she is abroad now, and there time the shadow time, so the days are just rolling there, time keeps going, time is fleeting there, but even then she could never forget the tree, not because of its appearance, it's because of the love, it seems. So time, like is an indirect comparison here. The giant wears the scarf, yeah, the scarf, the giant wears the scarf. Usually human wears, it's an attire, a part of a thing, but here the giant wears the creeper winding around the tree. Like snow and mist, like is simile, the waves gently kissed. Okay, again it's a quality of a human there, personification. The earth lay trance and dreamless. Of course humans are always found to be dreamy and all that, and here the earth was in a dreamy condition, and it was made the entire earth in a silent mode, where she was able to listen to the lament of the tree. Again here personification, and I have heard that wail far away, it is a personification again. So once again, children, hope you have understood. Here it's completely about the nature, nature in the sense you'll have to understand the nature is a holy plan given by God, but we do not use it properly. The birds and the animals are able to enjoy the sight of the nature, and they are ready to cooperate with the nature, except for the human beings. So we are greedy enough, we want to have everything from nature, but we do not want to replenish, means to replace them. And here she says she's not like that. She just remembers the tree under which she had played along with her friends and cousins there, and she wants to honor it by immortalizing naka, to always to remember it forever, As I already told you, this unit 2 is a descriptive. The first lesson is a nice cup of tea, and I don't know how many of you have learned to make a nice cup of tea. You are in the quarantine now, I think you have plenty of time. I wish you to become a great tea master. Try to learn of how to master the art of cooking. It's a tea making there. Try to learn that also. And here, if possible, pay attention towards the nature. And you have also understood this quarantine period has allowed everything to go on its own without any disturbance. Even the Ganges seemed to be very pure enough, it seems. So people were just are amazed to see the sight, it seems. So nature is a wonderful thing which will have to be paid more of attention to. And I think Toru Dutt has also taught you a lesson, and that also just based on a tree that she had in her own garden there. Okay, but tree is an abode of birds, animals and all that, and look at their responsibility and look at our responsibility. Okay, and tomorrow I think we'll be just doing with the non-detail, and that is also a descriptive form. It's about a young boy of Pondicherry, an Indian only, and the story is made into a film also. Okay, it talks about the fantasy and the incredible experience of a young man who had survived 227 days with the ferocious tiger. Tomorrow we shall see with that. Thank you, children. Have a nice day. God bless you.